88.5 FM. Welcome to a Friday edition of the Shaggy Jenkins Show here. I'm glad that you tuned in today. We've got a lot to cover before the weekend gets here, including coming up, Trump versus Hitler, the rebirth of radical racism in the world, particularly the United States. And then, of course, because it is Friday and we want to leave on a high note, I will have a feel-good Friday story for you right at the end of the show to help lift your spirits after we get through crushing it throughout the rest of the show. Hey, I am your host, Shaggy Jenkins. Thanks for joining me today. If you'd like to follow me online, it's kind of easy to do. On Twitter, it's at Shaggy Live. And then, of course, on Facebook, well, / Shaggy Live. I kind of just keep the same name and everything. Instagram. I really hate to admit this. Google Plus. I have that. I don't know why. Social media to me is a lot like Frito-Lays. I can't have just one. But any social media that you're on, if you want to find me, look for Shaggy Live, okay? Let's get back into something that we've been doing all week this week. It's talking about the American family, particularly how all of us like to screw it up. And we all have a hand in screwing up the family. Today, we've talked about mom. We've talked about dad. We've talked about the kids. Who else could be hurting the American family right now? What if I told you it was the grandparents? Oh, God, I know. Right now, I'm about to dig myself into a hole, and a lot of you listening are saying, Shaggy, that's a boiling pot of hot water you don't want to wade out into. You're about to call the grandparents out, and grandparents in our culture and our society here are sacred. Beyond reproach, as it were. So, you might want to watch what you're about to say, but hear me out, gentle listener. There is a starting point to being a parent. And I know that all of us love to think that there is no stopping point of being a parent. But truthfully and honestly, there is, dare I say, an end of services contract with your kids. Look, you're never going to stop being a parent. And when your kids have kids and you become a grandparent, it's even great because then you can do all the things with the grandkids that you couldn't do with your own kids because you have money, because you're not raising your own kids anymore. And two, because once you spoil them and they're crying and loaded up on sugar, you can give them back to your own kids as revenge for all the crap they put you through. It's an endless cycle of hatred on the grandparents' part. I'm kidding, of course. Grandparents always look forward to the birth of their grandchildren and stuff. However, some grandparents don't stop parenting the parent. And that's kind of what I wanted to bring up today in the Focus on Your Family segment. When is a good time to stop being a parent? Now, there's a lot of different schools of thought in our country right now. One of them is that you cease to be a parent the second that you become a grandparent. You cease to be so doting, so helicoptery around your own kids the second that they start to have children of their own. Now, that's one school of thought. Another one is you have to generally have an exit plan in their teenage years, so that sometimes around their early 20s, they are independent individuals. And you stop at that point being the helicopter hovering around, do you need money kind of parent. But one of the things that's happened in our country is that people have not learned that not only do families and parenting have an accelerator pedal, it also has a brake pedal. And we need to pump our brakes, some grandparents. Now, I know it's difficult. When you look at your children and you're thinking, do I actually trust them to make good, conscious decisions that will benefit not only their well-being, but the well-being of their household? There is that side of you that doubts that ability. And let's face it, you had to change their diaper, so of course you're going to be the person that doubts them. However, when you let your doubts turn in to being a parent while your kids are parenting themselves, of telling your son or daughter every little single thing that they are doing wrong in their life, not because they're bleeding, they're in the hospital, they're on drugs, they have terrible hygiene or something, not any of those reasons, which it is justifiable for you as a parent at any age, tell your kid, wipe your cole, okay? If you can smell it, you know? However, some grandparents don't have an off button. And so when their kids move on and they're getting their own families and stuff, these parents come in an invasive style and tell either the child itself or the spouse, their child or their child's spouse, they start dictating how that relationship works and the reactions that people should have versus the reactions that they would naturally have if you, the parent, would pump your brakes and get out of their life and let your kids be grown up. It seems that with in the household, communication is the big problem. But when it's factors outside of the household that determine your family life, fear is the one that seems to be the major motivating factor. Well, grandparents, think of it this way. You were once a young newlywed. You were once maybe even a college graduate. Probably not likely, but there's a good chance that you were. And in those years that you were going through those things, did your parent come behind you and clean up all of your messes? Did they bail you out of trouble every time financially that you got yourself into it? Did they come to your job and tell your boss, hey, treat my kid better when you had a disagreement? Or maybe even coworkers? No, they didn't. You had to adult yourself up to that level, right? And if you can do it yourself, you have to know on a genetic level those skills have been passed to your offspring. Unless they have come out with some sort of deformity or some sort of disability, your baby has all the potential in the world to actually become a fully functioning adult, able to take care of themselves, able to pay their own bills, and able, dare I say, to make their own decisions about the health and welfare of their family. And with this big umbrella that we see some grandparents casting from time to time, children don't have a chance to set up their own umbrellas. They're too busy living in the shadow of somebody else wanting to dictate how their relationship functions. Now, grandparents, I know right now you probably ground your dentures into a fine white powder in anger. I understand. It sounds like I'm saying a lot of mean things about grandparents in general, and I'm not. What I'm truthfully saying is that look around and ask yourself a simple question as a grandparent. Am I enjoying the fruits of my labor by watching my adult children have their own life experiences, have their own educational moments, their own great nostalgic memories with their families? Because if the answer is yes, you've done a good job, you can stop being a parent now. Sit back, drink some tea, enjoy being a grandparent, spoil the kids when they come around, and then send those little snot-nosed brats home. But enjoy it. Because, trust me, at some point in life, we have all found ourselves alone, with no resources, with no helping hand around, with nobody there to come up and clean up the mess that we found ourselves. And those of us that are still alive and are still employed and are still happily married and things like that, we are the survivors. And we wouldn't be survivors unless somebody had allowed us to fail. You see, one of the things that knowledge is built on in this country isn't just success, it's failures. And grandparents in overwhelmingly increasing numbers hate when their kids fail. Problem is, they have to fail. They have to make those mistakes. Failure is an option. And not only is it an option, failure, if you're living life the right way, is an inevitability. You will hit failure in life. And grandparents, parents of other parents, I know that you want to swoop in there and be like, ha ha ha, I have all the answers. I've been there before. But you're robbing the next generation, your children that you profess to love so much and care about so deeply. You're robbing them of the chance of being better people on their own. So think about it real quick. If your kids are doing okay for themselves, maybe they're barely scraping by, but they're not asking you for help, don't try to help them. Let them learn. Because I guarantee you, the lessons that you're taking away from them that are not getting passed on to their children will bankrupt your family spiritually, morally, emotionally, and financially somewhere down the road. Maybe not in this generation, but the generation after that. You're ill-equipping the succeeding generations. You're not giving them enough knowledge and enough real-life experience to work from. So think about it, grandparents. When do you stop to be a parent? It's a fine line, but there is a line that you cannot cross. Speaking of lines that we don't cross, coming up next, we compare Trump to Hitler. It's the Shaggy Jenkins Show. 88.5 FM, the voice of Maui. It's the Shaggy Jenkins Show. Welcome back to it. Oh, love when these weekend shows kind of happen, don't you? Hey, if you would like to tweet or something during the show, I can get those at Shaggy Live. You can also post up stuff on our Facebook page, anything like that. I'll give you links and stuff in just a little bit, okay? On the way, because I am doing a lot of, dare I say, bad news here right ahead of the weekend. On the way, I've got a feel-good Friday story for you that will definitely lift your spirits after I'm done crushing them for the next 2 segments. And I do apologize about this. But, ladies and gentlemen, you gentle listener, we need to have a conversation. This conversation is about Donald Trump. Oh, God, I know. This is not the Grudge Retort, which, by the way, you'll catch a good replay of the Grudge Retort coming up after this show, if you're listening here on 88.5 FM. But the Grudge Retort, it's a sister show to this show. This week, They had some interesting things to say about the political race. And every single time that T word comes up, Trump, you can't hear it on the radio, but behind the scenes, Eric and Danny love to mess with Daniel and just sit there in the microphones during the break and go, Trump, 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 Trump. Because it drives Daniel crazy on the Grudge Retort. It really does. It drives me kind of crazy, too, because I can hear it in the other room, me being the one listener of their show. But the thing that we have to bring up about Donald Trump is ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the circus. Okay, let's just start from where we are in the political landscape in our country at this crucial moment in time in history. Welcome to the circus. This week we've called it the jungle. This week we've called it the CF. I will let you fill in what those two letters stand for. One of them rhymes with duck. But in all the ways that we've described the 2016 elections, circus is really a good analogy. And let me explain why. Because every circus has a sideshow freak. And right now in the presidential election, we have a sideshow freak, and his name is Donald Trump. And everybody, including the media, has developed this love affair of hating the guy. Now, I am going to say this, I am a person that believes in a progressive agenda, whether it comes from a conservative or a liberal party. I don't care what your little symbols are. I'm looking for actual thinking, compassionate lawmakers that try to err on the side of increasing the amount of money that we have in our pockets, the amount of freedoms that we have in our states and our country, and also the amount of well-being we are able to share, not only here in this country, but from around with other countries around the world. That's kind of the loose, hippy-dippy way of looking at politics that I do from time to time. But when we look at Trump and we look at this just vitriol, hatred that seems to be out in the public sphere about him, and once again, it's about a politician's rise to power that is being compared to another politician's rise to power. That bothers me, okay? Let's just start there. Trump, love him or hate him. And trust me, I am definitely on the side of he is a circus sideshow freak. I'll throw peanuts at him when he's in the cage, but other than that, I don't want to have any interaction with the guy or his cronies. But guys like Trump you need to stop comparing them to guys like Hitler. And I've seen this in the news time and time and time again, including some of these protests at Trump rallies, where, look, I understand, you have a political, ideological difference with a Oompa Loompa with a bad spray tan and a toupee. I understand that. That's fine to have. But the second that you start throwing out comparisons to Hitler, you are taking away all of the power that this man's own faults have, superseding them with a perception of Hitler-esque behavior. Now, I am not a Trump supporter. However, I am a supporter of leveling the playing field and dealing in realistic terms with what is going on. Slander and name-calling and stuff like that you see at these rallies, these anti-Trump rallies and stuff like that. Hey, even the anti-Hillary rallies. You don't really hear of any anti-Bernie rallies. I wonder why that is. Maybe it's like one guy that shows up and it's just like, they're blocking my access to the coffee shop. You know. You don't hear too many about Bernie protesting. However, these other groups, when they're out protesting other people, you have Clinton being compared unfavorably to several other women of history, and then you have Donald Trump being compared to Adolf Hitler. Once and for all, I want to end this debate of calling Trump Hitler. Even though I don't support the guy, even though I'm on the other side of the ticket from him, politically and ideologically, we have to stop this stupid rhetoric of trying to compare every person we don't like to Hitler. Conservatives did it to Obama when he first got into office and into the Affordable American Affordable Health Care Act went in. Yeah. Hey, he's a Hitler. He's a Hitler. He's trying to dictate death squads and stuff. He's a Hitler. The neocons and stuff got so mad at President Obama, he was Hitler. Well, now, Obama, 8 years later, he's going out of office, never to return again. We're going to have to select from a new cast of crazies, and one of them is already being called, this time on the other side of the ticket, Hitler. People that want to compare other people to Hitler, you cannot have it both ways. Because if you want to say anything about Hitler with these two politicians that I just mentioned, President Barack Obama and Republican nominee Donald Trump, if you want to make any sort of lateral comparison between them and Hitler, the only effective thing that you can say, the only thing that ties Obama, Hitler, Trump, Clinton before that, George W. Bush before that, Ronald Reagan before that, the only thing that connects all of these United States presidents to Hitler, truthfully, is that at one point their office did something called Operation Paperclip, and we let a bunch of Nazis into the country for free. Post-World War II. The office of the president helped sign off on Operation Paperclip. And just like Hitler, all of these guys that have ran the United States are in charge of a Congress. And they had to go through a political campaign to get where they are. That's it. I have just given you the only similarities between Hitler and all of the United States presidents that has any relevance whatsoever. But at that same token, you could say that somebody like Mossad is like Hitler. Somebody like Tony Blair from the UK, David Cameron, they're like Hitler. Margaret Thatcher, she's like Hitler. Because they all had to run campaigns to get to their office. That's the only similarity between all of those people. So we need to stop this comparison with Hitler because, trust me, every time you call Trump Hitler, you're taking away from the actual mistakes and the perceptions of failure and fault that the name Donald Trump has on its own. Instead, you're given a polarizing image to your opposition to rally behind. The anti-Hitler effect is, as it were. A bunch of people rally behind a candidate that they believe in a lot, and then a lot of other people will rally against them and call that person Hitler. Guess what? The people that just called that candidate Hitler have now enamored themselves to the vengeful state of their opposition. And that means that that politician can go back and they're comparing me to evil, but you know we're not evil, and all of a sudden the crowds grow and you are actually helping feed the fire that you're trying to put out. Instead of stopping these stupid comparisons between modern-day politicians and Adolf Hitler and allowing them to be shown objectively, non-biasedly to the public as the buffoons they are on their own merit. We don't need a demigod evil figure to keep comparing everybody to. Not when, realistically, we can look at some of the things that they've done with their business practices, look at some of the things that they've done maybe with their email servers or stuff like that. Look at those actions, and without having to compare them to Adolf Hitler, say, you're not a good candidate. And you're not a good candidate not because of some sort of made-up perception of hatred, not some sort of I'm name-calling you. You're not a good candidate because without all of those things, you just suck at your job. And eventually, the electorate of the United States is going to look at Hillary Clinton and look at Donald Trump not through the lens of, are these people Hitler-esque? Even though I got to admit, I've got a couple of laughs out of the pictures of Donald Trump with a little Hitler mustache. It just cracks me up. I don't know why. I'm silly, I guess. But we need to look at these candidates through the lenses of what do they really do? What is the strength of their characters versus of, hey, let's put them in the Hitler lens and see how well they line up to the outline. You damage your argument against the things that you hate when you try to vilify them in a polarizing manner. It's something called the martyr syndrome. And the more people compare Trump to Hitler, the more people on the other side of that argument are going to see him as some sort of sacrificial lamb for their beliefs, and they're going to rally behind him in even greater numbers. You want to know the thing that should scare you about the comparison between Trump and Hitler? Both of them were marginally successful until the very second people started getting hateful about their platforms, therefore creating a martyr, therefore creating a domino effect that led into, well, you know where it led. Let's try not to keep it leading there this time. Stay close. We'll come back with radical racism in the United States, the rebirth. It's the Shaggy Jenkins Show. .5 FM, the voice of Maui. It is the Shaggy Jenkins Show, Friday edition. Welcome to it. So glad that you could be here today. In just a little bit, we'll get to a feel-good story for your weekend that'll, kind of help lift your spirits, okay? But before we get there to that, and especially after I just counted up the amount of times I said the word Hitler on the air in my previous segment, and oh my God, am I going to be in trouble if that's an FCC fine? Dear God, we are going to be so broke if that was a finable offense that I just went through. Before we get to the feel-good start, we've got one little bit of badness to bring up, and this is a story, or should I say, this is a collection of stories that I've been watching over this week. Oh God, how do I say this? It's just going to, it's going to really make you doubt that we live in a happy and sunny world like we like to pretend. See, this show is based in the 50th state, Hawaii. And Hawaii's culture is very warm, very inviting, very friendly, very community-oriented. We don't have, even though we do have racism here, we don't have a lot of the racial scruffs that we have in other places. Wow. I have a phone ringing. I should check this out. Hello?
Hello?
Hey, Marlon.
Hey, Shaggy.
It's been a long time since I talked to you.
I know.
No.
How you, man?
I'm good. Hey, Marlon.
What?
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah?
It's kind of a serious question, though.
What?
Okay. Does racism still live in Maui?
Huh?
Do people still hate each other for being different on Maui?
Yeah, they are.
Oh. Was it any better when you were a kid? Small Hanabata days?
Yeah?
Yeah, it's just gotten worse over the last couple of years?
Yes.
Oh. Hey, do you ever get it?
Yeah, I do sometimes.
What do you do? Do you give them one of these under the chin like, beat it?
Yeah, I do that. I do that.
Yeah, well, that's the smart way to be. Yeah.
Right. In that you're telling on the radio, man?
Yeah, that's what we're talking about. But
Right now?
yeah, right now. You actually just did that right now on the radio and on the TV show, too.
In who?
Yeah, you'll see.
Will you just be a guest speaker on the radio?
Yeah, you should do that someday, Marlon. But
Who?
no, you should. You should come here. Be my guest speaker on the radio, and we'll talk about your life at the airport when you retire. All right. Well, Marlon, I got to go. I'll talk to you soon, okay, buddy?
Bye,
Bye, Marlon.
Shaggy.
Oh, man. See, that's sad. Marlon is a guy that's worked down at the airport, and he's getting ready to retire because he's worked there for years and years and years and years. And you would think that when people get off of their planes and stuff here from Hawaii, year after year after year, you would see the racism kind of go away. Especially given, and I don't know how to tell you this, but when we advertise tourism of Hawaii to other parts of the nation, we actually show them pictures of Hawaiians. It's not like we whitewash Hawaii in the advertisements. There's actual Hawaiians in the commercials. Now, they might be in the background, depending on what state. I mean, you know, freaks people out from Michigan when they see something that's off-white. But Hawaii, around the nation, we've always kind of been portrayed as a safer, kinder, gentler part of the country when it comes to our relations with each other. On the mainland, though, there is what I would like to call the rebirth of Jim Crow mentality. If you don't know what Jim Crow is, back in the 60s, the area of the country that I'm from, the South, made this glorious decision to do something called segregation. And I say that with all sarcasm intended. Under the precipice of separate but equal, which, by the way, it never was. It's just like Fox News always tries to say fair and balanced, separate but equal. I think they actually stole that, Fox News, from the segregationist of the South. But we've always tried, or at least some people in this society have always tried to see us not as together, but as separate. As different. Now, as a person of the sciences, I myself can tell you that every single human life on planet Earth only has about 6 or 7 genetic variations between all of us. That's it. If you cannot count the differences in 7 billion lives on more than 2 hands, then you might need to reconsider your thoughts of difference in the human race. But this Jim Crow mentality lately has been making a resurgence in America. As a matter of fact, some of the headlines that I was looking at today shows that kids are getting kicked out of schools across the United States. One act in Texas, you're not going to believe this, drew a whites-only sign over a water fountain in a high school. In North Carolina, a couple of students were kicked out from raising a Confederate flag and calling it White Privilege Day. Now, there's also stories of restaurants and stuff, and it's not just whites and blacks, it's Muslims that have this problem with other races across the United States. If you are Filipino, or if you are Hawaiian, and you've ever jumped on a plane from here in Hawaii and you went to the mainland, you know people don't know what to make of you. And so they treat you very either rough or different or overly polite and a little weird and creepy. It seems like in this country, all the success that we've had over the last decade or so of coming together has now started to tear itself apart. Now, you could say that stories like last year's Charleston shooting, a white male walks into a church and starts gunning down black parishioners, you could say that that was kind of the kickoff of this white rise. You could go back further than that, like way further, and say that people like the Branch Davidians and all of those crazy cults that we used to get back in the mid-90s, that they were the start of this whole backwards movement towards racial and gender inequality in the country. But instead of looking at the origins of it, let's look at what's happening now, the rise of it. Younger and younger generations are now starting to engage in more racially fueled fighting. And this isn't just in cities like Ferguson, where the police and the population are in open war with each other. And when they're not in open war with each other, they're in open contempt of each other. It's not just areas like that this is happening. This is happening in American classrooms and in places like Connecticut, in New York, Georgia, duh, Mississippi, Alabama. Come on. Do I really have to name all the dumb states? Or maybe I should. Because maybe with each name that I name, you'll understand that this is a trend that is starting to come back up. And what do we do with this trend? What do we do that can stop this rise of stupidity, of radical racism in the United States? One of the things that we should stop doing is we should stop this war on brown people. And I'm talking about the war on terror. The war on terror, aka what I call the war on brown people, because that's how the media portrays it. Night after night after night after night, ever since the administration of George W. Bush, media likes to harp up on the threats to the United States' sanctity of life from across the globe. Now, let's just go ahead and say something here. If you've ever traveled the world, certain part of the world does not benefit from the same educations that we do here. And that's pretty sad because the United States, we are not the world leader in educated people. So imagine, if you would, people dumber than us. And not dumber. That implies that their minds don't have the capacity. No, ignorant. When information, just like water, doesn't get into certain places, there's a drought. And this mentality drought around the world is what's exploited in countries like the Middle East, the lower Asian peninsula. Hell, you could even say in some parts of South America and the Caribbean. The sentiment that, and this is horrible to admit, the sentiment that God, I just don't want to admit it. I really don't. But the sentiment that Americans are inherently racist. There, I said it. All Americans inherently racist. That's the perception around the world. And that's the perception also, too, that when we go to the news media to get information about the world, that they almost indoctrinate us with. Like, remember back in 1993, two white gentlemen decided to load up a U-Haul van with some nitrous phosphate, diesel fuel, and stuff like that, and pull it up in front of an Oklahoma building. And killed 163 people. They were white. At the time, President Clinton did call them terrorists, domestic terrorists. But the thing is in the news media never grabbed onto that T word. They called them radicals, which, let me just go ahead and say, as a child of the 70s and 80s, when you hear something called radicals, you're thinking Nike came out with a new shoe. They called them radicals. They didn't call them terrorists. They called them activists. They didn't call them terrorists. They never really made an effort to identify these two white gentlemen, Timothy McVeigh and the other guy. They never really made a big effort, the media, to say these are the bad people we should be looking for. But the second that 9/11 happened, it was very easy to put a brown face on the skin and say, there's the enemy, over and over and over and over again. And because they've done that, certain parts of this country, remember how I said that education is a lot like water, and some areas it doesn't go and there's droughts? Well, in the poorer education parts of the United States, they see this inundation of media blitzkrieg hatred, and they're indoctrinated into it. And then all of a sudden they start to think, and this is true, and it's sad, but it's true. They start to think that I never see white people doing all of these crimes, so chances are, maybe white's all right, and I just need to go hate all these other people because they seem to be doing all. And I know it seems simpleton to you, but you have to understand that there's some places in this country where that's the educational level. monkey see, monkey do, or monkey perceive, monkey do. And the media is behind kind of fueling this radical racism, even though that they're trying to say, oh, no, we're not. But look how many times they highlight the stories of minority crimes over white crimes. Perfect example. Gerald Fogle. Remember him, the subway guy? Sex trafficking of a minor, traveling across state lines for sex with a minor, child pornography charges. Not a good guy, right? Now, in the same time that he was going through his sentencing period, do you know what we wanted to concentrate on in the news cycle? Lamar Odom, a former NBA basketball player who had an OD in a brothel. Just right around the same time those two stories were happening. Jared Fogle, terrible, legitimate person, done terrible, legitimate things, white guy. Lamar Odom went to a legal brothel, engaged in activity between consenting adults, has a substance abuse problem, hurt only himself. Why is he the villain? Why was he the one that we spent the most time on the story? Oh, maybe it's because, what's his skin color again? And so when I talk about the rise of radical racism in the United States, you have to realize that I'm actually calling out the media for not being unbiased in how we perceive criminals. You can't have a double standard. A crime is a crime is a crime. A criminal is a criminal is a criminal. A bad person is a bad person is a bad person. But the media doesn't want to see that way. They always want to kind of color by numbers, if you would. Sad but true. And we're all suffering. How will it end, though? Will it end when you start turning off the TV? Will it end when you demand for better news coverage of things in your life? More fair and balanced, as it were? Good luck with that, by the way. No, radical racism ends when all of us address it. Verbally, loudly, and consistently. It's all one race. Love them or hate them. It's the only one we got. We'll be back with more Shaggy Jenkins Show up next.
Nakekio Emilia is a program for children and teens 3 to 18 grieving the death of a parent, brother, sister, Ohana member, or close friend. We provide peer support groups, not therapy, and all groups are free. We have openings now, and if you're interested, please call Dr. Brooke Brown at 214-9832 for information or contact us through our website, nkoemaui.org. Aloha.
KAKU's broadcast is made possible in part from donors like Power Up Comedy, organic comedy grown on Maui, comedy for private and public functions day or night, entertaining on Maui since 2011 with a weekly open mic on Tuesdays in Kihei, and regularly featuring comedy shows island-wide. Find out more at facebook.com/Maui Comedy. Please support the businesses that, through their generous donations, empower free speech in the Maui community. Hi, this is Shaggy Jenkins, Program Director here at KAKU 88.5 FM, the voice of Maui. Now, as you know, KAKU is a listener-supported radio station. Now, if you're a business who truly cares about free speech and would like to help us support the voice of Maui, give us a call at 871-5554. That's 871-5554. And become part of the voice of Maui and Maui's only free speech radio station.
Hi, I'm Chuck Sauce of the Biscuits and Gravy Show. Do you like cooking? Do you like comedy? Do you like cooking? Here on the Biscuits and Gravy, we got you smothered and covered, baby. Join us every Wednesday at 11 in our studio kitchen, cooking up some laughs, sauce on the side. Enjoy such segments as Comedy Corner, Weird Al Wednesdays, and Chuck Stuff the Knowledge Buffalo. Yeehaw! Joined by local chefs, comedians, and special guests, KNUQ, the voice of gravy.
88.5 FM, the voice of Maui. It's the Shaggy Jenkins Show. Thank you so much for joining us. Final segment of the week. Wow. And it's been a big week here around the station. Got some news to cover for you. The weekend shows that are coming up. There's been, some new shuffling and stuff around the weekends here at the local station. You'll be able to hear those. Got Bodie B and Death Tracks. That's happening. I've got a lot of stuff. Starting tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Make sure you're right back here. Okay, let's get into the final segment of the show. I promised that after about an hour of messing with your heads, that I would give you a good feel-good story to go into the weekend. Now, here's the thing. The feel-good story is not going to be one of those things that I read off of Facebook or stuff like that, because you and your own time can go through and read all those warm and fuzzy stories. Instead, I thought I would tell you a little sweet story about a woman that I know who's dead. And I know you're thinking, wow, how is this going to be a feel-good story? All this week, I have been covering something called Focus on Your Family, where we've talked about everybody's roles within the household and stuff. But let's talk a little bit about the product of a successfully communicating household, where the kids understand and have some respect for the parents understand that the kids and loving each other is a full-time job, so they communicate constantly on their needs and their wants and their directions in life. What is the product of this family, this mythical family that I've been building up all week on the show, on your Focus on the Family? Well, and Peter at the front desk here in the office, he always wants me to do more stories about my own life. So I had that family. Actually, I didn't have that family. I had always dreamed I had that family, but when I got older, I realized, oh my God, I lived with Jason and Freddie. And I'm not so sure which one was the nightmare and which one was the slasher. Love you, Mom and Dad. Growing up in that kind of an environment that I've been talking all this week about on In Your Focus in the Family, of this household where things just work. What does that output look like? When I was a child, I know what you're thinking, Shaggy, you're still a child. I've seen you. You're a midget. No. I'm short. I'm not a child. Children have hair. I have male pattern baldness. When I was a child, much hairier than I am now, I lived beside an old lady, and when I say old, I mean she was alive during the Civil War old, named Cordy, short for Cordelia, or Cordelia, depending on where you are in the country, but Cordy, old Cordy on the corner, that's what we called her. And me and all the guys in our neighborhoods and stuff, we would jump on our BMX bikes and go tearing across the fields between our houses. Well, it just so happened that Cordy's house was in the midpoint of those two places. Now, one of the guys I grew up with actually was related to Cordy, and he would never tell me how. Every time we would go by the house and stuff, he would just be like, oh, God, there's old Cordy again, guys. We got to get out of here. She's going to come out of the house yelling and stuff like that. I've always been a curious kid, though. And I noticed that every single time that he told us to step on it and get the lead out and get out of Cordy's yard, that this slow, frail woman was not coming into the yard in anger. I never saw a trace of anger, none of that old curmudgeon-y, get off my lawn, you kids. I never saw that. I just saw a woman that saw some kids in her yard and decided to step out. So one day, I waited until, Greg and Matt and all the other friends, and we'd all got out of school and stuff, and we were all going to meet at Greg's house, which means I had to get on my bike and jump the fence right across Cordy's yard and make it out to Greg's. But this time I decided, you know what? My curiosity has gotten the best of me. I'm going to find out why she keeps coming out. So I jump the fence with my bike and stuff, and I start to pedal across the yard, and instead of hauling ass like I usually do, I slowed down, and sure enough, as I got by the corner, the door opened up, and here this little, frail, tiny woman, I think she was like 4'10", stepped out of her house. Now keep in mind, her life predates cars. Not the movie, the actual automobiles. And so the fact that she was mobile and stuff was, whoa, amazing to me. So I stopped the bike and I just come over to her, and just like my parents had taught me, just ask how they're doing. And if they're not doing okay, son, do what you can to help them. That's the lessons that my parents taught me growing up, and it's one that I'm trying to teach my kid. Eventually kids. So I rode over to her and I'm like, "Hi, Miss Cordy. How are you?" And what happened after that simple opening for the rest of this woman's life, she had made a new friend in a young boy. Because the reason that she kept coming out into her yard every time that she saw us kids going through was because Greg was one of the few relatives that she could actually identify by sight anymore, and she was just a lonely lady that wanted someone to listen to her stories. And she lived 4 years after that meeting, and during those 4 years, I stopped by her house to help her fold her clothes. Now, I did this behind the back of my friend so he wouldn't think I'm one of those uncool guys. But I would cut her grass. I would help her hang her laundry. And every single week, she would always give me these amazing custard pies as a reward and tell me about her husband and her life growing up and what it was like to be a young newlywed. And, ooh, this thing called electricity was kind of cool. And I learned so much from her, and I had to do it all in secret because my friends thought it was embarrassing to hang out with this little old lady. Well, before this little old lady died, she told me a story about how your life at a certain point isn't about yourself, it's about others, and about the things and the knowledge that you can share, and that it was very good that I was coming to her house every day, that she could end her life sharing her story and her skills. Now, suffice to say, I don't have it now, and I'm sad that I don't. But before she died, and over 300 different pieces of individual fabric, Cordy hand-sewed a quilt for me. Now, I burned down in a house fire a long time ago. But the lesson of that meeting, and those great custard pies, and that quilt stuck with me to this day. Don't judge people because of what you think they're thinking. Take the time and ask them how they really are. Who knows? You could find yourself an unexpected friend. Hope you find one this weekend. Until next week.